Great. Okay, we've just gone live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Joint Standing Committee on the Judiciary. Today we'll start with a public hearing on LD 1728. And then at 10 o'clock, we will begin a series of work sessions. We had also scheduled a work session for this afternoon, but that's been postponed and will likely be next Thursday afternoon. So this morning, the public hearing at 10, and then we'll begin our public hearing at 9, 3 work sessions beginning at 10. And as always, we'll start this morning with introduction of committee members. I'm just going to call on people as I see them on my screen. Representative Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, all. I'm Steve Moriarty from House District 45, which is the town of Cumberland, home of the Cumberland Fair, and part of Gray, which is the home of the Gray Blueberry Festival.
Representative Thorne.
Morning. My name is Representative Jim Thorne. I represent District 103, which is Carmel, Herman, and a portion of Etna up in fabulous Penobscot County. And today we're having a little light snowfall.
Representative Babbage.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christopher Babbage. I represent House District 8, which is a part of the town of Kennebunk.
Thank you. Representative Sheehan.
Good morning. My name is Erin Sheehan, and I represent House District 12, which is part of Biddeford.
Thank you. Representative Evangelos.
Good morning, everyone. Jeffrey Evangelos, House District 91, and I reside in Friendship.
Senator Keim.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Keim, and I'm proud to represent Senate District 18, which is northern Oxford County and 2 communities in Androscoggin.
And Senator Sanborn.
Good morning. I'm Heather Sanborn. I represent Senate District 28, which is half of Portland and half of Westbrook. It was flurrying a little bit here, actually, when I walked the dogs this morning.
And Co-Chair Harnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Harnett. I represent House District 83, which is the town of Farmingdale and the city of Gardner. And I apologize for missing the last couple of days, but I am glad to be back with you this morning.
Yeah, we're glad you're feeling better. And I'm Ann Carney. I'm the Senate co-chair of this committee. I represent Senate District 29, which includes South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, and a little bit of Scarborough. And we are joined today by our OPLA analyst, Peggy Reinsch, and our committee clerk, Stupi Panett. And with that, we will begin our public hearing today. The public hearing is on LD 1728, an act to provide assistance to law enforcement officers to allow them to protect the residents of the state. And I will bring the sponsor, or Supi, could you please bring Senator Timberlake onto the panel? See, I may be able to accomplish that now.
Madam Chair, I just moved him.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Senator Timberlake, welcome to the Joint Standing Committee on the Judiciary. We're pleased to have you here today, and you can proceed with presenting your bill when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Senator. And I just want you all to know, out of my 12 years of service in the State House, this is probably the hardest bill I've ever brought forward for me. Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee of Judiciary. I am Jeff Timberlake. I represent Senate District 22, which includes the towns of Durham, Greene, Leeds, Lisbon, Litchfield, Sabattis, Turner, Wales, and Wayne. When he kills somebody tonight, it's on you. Those words still haunt me today. Spoken 11 months ago by Troy Varney, hours before he and his wife Dulcie endured the unspeakable violence and were brutally killed. Their daughter, Shelby, witnessed this. None of us can begin to understand the horrific trauma and heartache she and her sister Audrey will live with forever. LD 728, an act to provide assistance to law enforcement officers to allow them to protect the residents of the state, was submitted as a response to this tragedy that happened in my hometown of Turner, Maine. The Varneys were murdered in the middle of the night by an intruder, actually a tenant, who was known to experience severe mental health issues, including mere hours before the attack. Last spring, I invited a group of interested stakeholders to get together and discuss how law enforcement officers could better protect citizens when faced with individuals who are on the verge of or in the midst of a mental health crisis, while at the same time not infringing on individuals' rights. As you know, it's very difficult to strike this balance. Following this group's first discussion and prior to this bill being carried over, another piece of legislation became law, LD 785, an act to change the standard of taking a person into protective custody, was heard before this committee and lowered the standard for a law enforcement officer to take someone into protective custody if that person poses a likelihood of serious harm. One circumstance under which a law enforcement officer can take a person into protective custody for examination by a medical practitioner is when they have probable cause to believe that a person may be mentally ill and due to that condition pose a likelihood of serious harm. In this instance, probable cause can be formulated by relying upon information provided by a third-party informant. This new standard, I believe, may have saved the lives of Troy and Dulcie Varney. After much discussion with various stakeholders, it may be best to allow some time for us to see the effects and the value of this new law. I'm told that since October, hundreds of people have been brought to the hospital instead of them being on their own to potentially cause harm to themselves or others. This chain of custody, so to speak, of course, brings us to another major roadblock, the lack of mental health providers and treatment. The need for additional providers and training for law enforcement officers is critical. I cannot give enough applause to the efforts of the public safety personnel, community, behavioral health clinics, alliances for addiction, mental health services, Disabilities Rights of Maine, NAMI Maine, the ACLU, and Maine Medical Association, and others who strive every day to keep our communities safe and healthy. Representatives of many of these organizations offered input and feedback on this bill, and I want to publicly thank all of them. Troy and Dulcie Varney were pillars in our community. They resided on the Shermley Farm in Turner Center. Troy owned and operated T.W. Varney Excavation and was a 25-year member of the Turner Nizinsket Masonic Lodge 101. Dulcie was 3 months shy of receiving her master's degree through the University of Southern Maine. She was a top-notch nursing instructor. The two of them loved their neighbors and were always willing to lend a helping hand. They cherished spending time with family and friends, and their daughters were their world. Despite all they've been through, Audrey and Shelby are model citizens. And I know that Troy and Dulcie are incredibly proud of them. I ask that you keep these images in your mind as you deliberate this and other legislation dealing with the difficult matters of the power of law enforcement, mental illness, and protective custody. My hope is that you would table this bill for the purpose of using it as a vehicle if it becomes necessary to make any tweaks or changes or to appropriate funding to additional training for law enforcement officers and mental health providers with regard to PL 377, which was LD 785, and the yellow flag law. I thank you all very much for your time and your attention. And I'm done. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Senator Timberlake. Committee members, are there any questions for Senator Timberlake? Not seeing any. And Senator Timberlake, we invite bill sponsors to remain on the panel for the public hearing, and so you're welcome to stay on the panel.
Thank you very much.
And now I'll bring over the Varney's daughters to the panel, and we'll hear first from Audrey and then from Shelby.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can. And can you just wait 1 minute? I think that your sister's joining us shortly. There we go. All right. Welcome to you both. We're sorry for your loss, and we appreciate you being here today. And Audrey, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Perfect, thank you. Good morning, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Audrey Varney, and I am here in support of LD 1728, an act to provide assistance to law enforcement officers to allow them to protect the residents of the state. I would like to preface my time here by stating if LD 785 were in place at the time of the events that took place that night on February 11th, 2021, it could have helped and saved multiple lives. As it states, LD 785 describes that police may take the person into protective custody if they possess a likelihood of serious harm, our keyword being likelihood. On the night of February 11th, 2021, I got a text from my mother, Delcy Varney, asking if I were willing to FaceTime with her. During the call, she explained to me what her and my father had witnessed at their apartment building earlier in the evening. They had received a phone call describing that one of their tenants, Patrick Mayer, was causing serious disturbance to other tenants and to his own mother. Upon further investigation, it was concluded that Mayer had threatened his own mother, chased her around the parking lot of the apartment building, and locked her in his apartment, which were all later denied by her when asked by the police. There were a number of witnesses to these events. Mayer more than exhibited that he posed a likelihood of serious harm to himself and to others in these moments. Police on the scene were standing back and waiting for orders from their higher-up, who was not present on the scene. Both my mother and my father and other tenants were concerned of what possibly could take place later that night. The police informed my parents that nothing could be done about the situation because Mayer was not a serious threat. And my father's intuition told him otherwise, and he went to one of the men and stated, "If anything happens tonight, it's on you," which were my father's last words to any law enforcement officer. Police informed my parents that they would patrol the area that night to ensure nothing became of the earlier events. At 1 o'clock that morning, Mayer was able to travel by foot a half a mile from the apartment building to my parents' home, break in and brutally attack and murder them. My mother was able to dial 911, and the nearby police did not make it to their residence for approximately 12 minutes, leaving my mother, my father, my sister Shelby, and her boyfriend Christian to fend for themselves against a man with knives, a gun, and murder on his mind. It is because of these reasons I believe we need a bill such as LD 1728 to not only help in situations such as this one, but to prevent situations such as this one. I believe with more training for our officers regarding mental illness and more awareness and knowledge of the signs and signals exhibited, we can further dissolve and prevent these serious and life-threatening situations. Shelby has more to share about the events that took place in my parents' home in the early morning of February 12th. That night runs through my mind each and every day, and I truly believe that with the help of you all, we can further prevent anything even remotely similar to this from happening again. I thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you very much for your testimony today. Committee members, any questions for Audrey Varney? Go ahead, Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Varney, for showing up and giving us your testimony this morning. And I know this must be difficult for you. My question is, are you aware, if you can answer, of any explicit threats that were made to your parents by the member that evening?
I am unaware if there are any explicit threats. I do know that other tenants were able to witness things that they heard through the floor of what he was saying.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Newell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Please excuse me for arriving just a little bit late. However, I was able to listen to the testimony. So thank you for that. But I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to make a statement to Miss Audrey Varney. Thank you for your strength.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Newell. Any other questions, committee members? No, okay. Thank you once again for your testimony, and you can stay on the panel as well for a little bit, and we will next hear from Shelby Varney. And Ms. Shelby Varney, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Hello, I'm Shelby Varney. Audrey, I just want to say very good job speaking. I was wondering if I was able to answer the question that Mr. Thorne had asked. Okay, so earlier that night, other tenants in the apartment building had heard Patrick through the floors saying that he had a gun and he had knives and that he wanted to kill his parents, but he knew it was wrong to kill both of them. He says, I want to kill my parents, I need to kill my parents, but I can't kill both of them, but I can't kill just one. And he insinuated like wanting to attempt to kill other people as well. But so my testimony is, so hello, I am Shelby Varney, the daughter of Troy and Dulcie Varney. I'm gathering here with my boyfriend Christian, who was also present at the time of my parents' murder. At the time of 1:42, I was awoken by screams from my mother and a gunshot that was set off by my father. From the previous night endeavors, I kind of knew exactly what was happening. I had a suspicion that Patrick had broken into the house. So I ran down the stairs to find my mom running into her bedroom, and she asked me to talk to 911, in which she then collapsed. And I got on the phone with 911 and kind of spoke to them about what was happening. And one thing that I never understood is I lost contact with 911 on 2 different occasions. I'm not sure if they hung up or what that was. So it took about 11 minutes for help to arrive, policemen and paramedics to arrive. And then when I ran out on the front steps to kind of show them like which door they should be coming in, and when they came in, they just kind of stood there in awe. They were unaware of like where to even begin due to lack of training. So after about 20 seconds, my boyfriend Christian asked like, hey, are you going to help us? We need help. And at that point they did. And it took probably 10 minutes to get my parents out of the house. And after that, Christian and I were then escorted into my dad's gun room, which bordered their bedroom in the hallway in where the accidents occurred. Patrick was then dragged into my mother's computer room, which is also right next to the gun room. We sat there until about 5 a.m. listening to Patrick's noises and chants that he went on to say. And when we were brought into that gun room, we never had a police officer with us. We got checked on 3 or 4 times by different policemen just to ask like, hey, can we get you some water, or how are you guys doing? But they never removed Patrick from the house or us. So at about 5:30 a.m., they brought us to the local Turner Rescue, where we gave our statements, and then family members could then come. At 18 years old, Christian was, and I was 19. We were unable to have our phones. We could not contact anyone. We just waited. And so like there was many aspects of that morning that showed lack of training on the police officers' portion of things. And I truly believe that if police officers had been better trained for situations like that, Christian and I could have endured less traumas, and maybe even with the LD 1728, we may have been able to prevent this from happening. And so the passing of LD 785 can definitely help in situations like this. It can help prevent what happened to my parents potentially. And if the policemen were able to bring Patrick into custody the night before, and he entered a cool down period, he may have never entered my home. And I understand that everyone has rights, and it would be against their rights to bring someone in for a cool down period. But I also believe that being able to protect people's lives is more important than giving people their rights 100% of the time. But I think that if we were able to better train law enforcement officers for situations like this, we could help prevent anything like this situation ever happening again. And with the pass of LD 1728, this could happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelby, and we really appreciate you providing testimony today. And again, we're sorry for your family's loss. And we have a couple of questions. Representative Thorne, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Shelby, for your testimony this morning, and sorry for your loss of your parents. Just for clarification on your testimony, were the 2 police officers that showed up different than the police officers that were there the evening before?
So there was more than 2 police officers that arrived that morning, one of which the police chief that my dad spoke to the night before, where he said, if something happens tonight, it's on you. He was there that morning. And there was one other police officer that had been there the previous night, but I'm unaware of how many police officers were actually there that morning, but I know of it. Christian says that there was around 4 that showed up that morning, and 2 of which were there the night before.
Thank you.
Senator Keim?
Thank you, both Audrey and Shelby. Thank you for being here. And I am so sorry for your loss. And you are very brave to come to us and to talk to us. So part of my question was what Representative Thorne asked. I was wondering how many officers responded. And we generally don't get a view into an incident such as this that you're giving us, because especially before anything's been finalized as far as investigations and the information's been released. But it is helpful for us to understand how things unfold and to try to consider what needs to be done. So your testimony is very helpful to us. And I just want you to know that as difficult as it is for you to come forward, it's helpful and valuable. So just for clarification, would you mind telling me again what unfolded, like what the officer's response was when they came in? Because I heard you say they didn't know what to do, but I wonder, obviously the whole thing's unfolding and you're also in terrible shock, but maybe you could just explain a little bit better to us sort of those moments as you remember them. Thank you.
Yeah, I can do that. So with the accident, my father had tackled Patrick in like the hallway at the bottom of the stairs, and my mother was in their bedroom, which was off from the bottom of the stairs. So I spent most of the time with my mother, and Christian was with my father and Patrick. But when the police officers came in, because I mean, there's multiple entrances to my house, I wanted to make sure that they knew which one to come into. The police officers entered and kind of stood right in the doorway in awe. And when Christian asked them like, hey, are you going to help? They then proceeded to put like gloves on for protection reasons. And it took them a very long time and to even like initiate to do that. And when they then stepped forward to start to help us, it was very like awkward. There was a lot of blood on the floor. They didn't want to step in it. They were trying to be very precautious of like crime scene and whatnot, but their whole approach, they moved Patrick out of the way so we could then access my father to get him some medical help. But just their whole approach of everything was very awkward and very unsure of how they should approach the situation. Not sure if that helps or not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kyman. I'm going to jump in with the question. Could you please also explain to us again what happened with regard to Patrick after the police arrived? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So when the police arrived, basically at the other end of the hallway, there's just a door frame that leads into my mother's computer room. They kind of grabbed him and dragged him through that doorway onto the floor in the computer room so paramedics could access my father. When they moved Christian and I into my parents' gun room, it just shares a wall. We sat there. For several hours, and Patrick, I mean, he was vomiting, throwing up, like just chanting on and on, saying different things that were not in English, and then he would chant them and it would get louder and louder and louder. And he just, for several hours, he threw up multiple times. And obviously there was a door in between the walls that were shared, but we never opened the door. So I am not very sure of like what the police were doing when they were with him. They didn't share any of that information, but I do know that 3 or 4 different times, one of the police officers that was with him came in to check on Christian and I, but I'm unaware of how the police were actually handling him. Patrick continued to ask very disturbing questions to the police officers, very inappropriate questions, and they just chose to ignore him. They didn't answer anything. They just completely ignored him the whole time.
And was there a law enforcement officer with him that entire time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry to ask you to relive that information, but as Senator Keim indicated, it's helpful for us as policymakers to understand. Appreciation. Go ahead, Representative Babbage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I too am thankful for the presence of these 2 young women. Can you help me to understand? I'm sorry, but does Turner have their own municipal police department? Do they just have a constable, or do you rely on the county sheriffs for most of your law enforcement needs?
Okay. Turner does not have their own sheriff's department. We run off from Androscoggin County Sheriff's Department. That was the police officers that arrived that morning, and my father also dealt with the Androscoggin County Sheriff's Department the night before. It was then later transferred into the state troopers' custody.
So all of these people were from the county sheriffs. Thank you. That's what I probably thought. I know sometimes there's a single constable or that may be employed by a town to complement that, but that's not the case with Turner. Is that right? Okay. Was there any, one of the things that I've often wondered about when you have a potentially dangerous event that occurred the night before that had all of these flags to be cautious, was there any communication at all that the police would stay in the area? I mean, you know, when there's a live wire down on the telephone poles, police often park there for the duration until the utility company can get there 10 or 12 hours later or whatever. And oftentimes I've thought, if somebody is on duty, what better place is there for them to be than in that vicinity and patrolling that vicinity the entire time that any impulsive behavior may take place? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so in the night before, when my parents talked to the sheriff's department, they asked, where they begged for them to be able to take him into custody, and they informed him that, I'm sorry, no, he hasn't actually broken any laws. There's no way that we can actually take him into custody. So my father did ask if a police officer could stay in the area or stay there and watch. And to my parents' belief, into what I interpreted it as, is that yes, they had said that someone would stay in the area and watch, but clearly they were not. But my sister might have a better answer to that. I see that her hand is waved.
Okay.
Let's hear from Audrey. Go ahead, Audrey.
Yeah, what I was getting at with my testimony was my parents were told that they would stay in the area to patrol it that night. And when I had added that he was able to walk by foot from the apartment building to my parents' house a half mile after dark, nobody had obviously saw him or witnessed him doing that. And it still took them about 11, 12 minutes to get to my parents' house. So it made me feel like they weren't super close to the area.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And again, thank you both for being here.
Representative Thorne, did you have another question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. And I don't know if this is better directed to Senator Timberlake or not, but I'd like to shift focus back to the response earlier in the evening and focus on that, where I think that's what the bill is versus a training issue that is also a case, but I don't think is relevant to the bill.
So Representative Thorne, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but are you posing a question to Senator Timberlake?
I believe I am, just because I think I'm formulating the question in my mind out loud as I speak. So I will ask Senator Timberlake directly.
Yeah, let me just ask you to hold off on one moment, because we are going to have a work session on this bill, but I also want to make sure that committee members don't have any other questions for Audrey and Shelby Barney. And so let's just to keep an orderly hearing, let's take care of that first. Committee members, are there any other questions for Audrey Barney or Shelby Barney? Looks like Representative Harnett has a question. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you very much, Shelby and Audrey. I can't imagine how difficult it is to relive this with us today, but it is so very important. And I've had some connectivity issues, so I apologize if this has been discussed already. But Shelby, the time you were sitting in that room with your boyfriend, you said for hours on end, were you left completely alone, or was there always somebody with you from law enforcement?
We were left completely alone. It was just Christian and I. When the police first entered the house, obviously, yes, I talked to 911 and it was my parents and there was an intruder in the house, but they also treated Christian and I as if we were also potential people that had harmed my parents. When they came in, they just threw us to the side. Basically, they didn't want us they didn't want us helping, the paramedics or anything with my parents. And then they just pretty much just brought us right into my dad's gun room and made us sit there, which, I mean, no supervision whatsoever. And in the course of the 3 to 4 hours that we were in there, someone came in and checked on us 3 or 4 times. I am not entirely aware. We were not allowed to leave. We were not allowed to get in contact with anyone. And I had to go to the bathroom a couple times, and I had to have like an escort out of the room. But other than that, we were left completely alone.
Did they ask you if you wanted to contact a family member or somebody close to the family to assist you during this time?
Well, we asked multiple times. They said we were not allowed to have our phones. We were not allowed to contact anyone. I mean, my uncle Trevor lives just right next door. He was my father's brother, and we were not allowed to contact him or anything.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you.
Senator Timberlake, we typically don't have bill sponsors raising hands during public hearings, but can you just let us know what your intent is? Did you want to speak to the Varney sisters?
Just before they hung up, I just wanted to thank them for being willing to come forward, because I won't see them after they go off and I won't be able to talk to them. And you noticed in my testimony, you know, that's why I said their father and mother would be very proud of them and they're model citizens. And that's all. I'm sorry. I know you don't. And I've done this for 12 years and I've never once interrupted, but I just felt it was important right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you don't have to apologize. I that's what I was expecting, you knowing what a thoughtful and caring person you are. I was anticipating that that's what you were going to do. And so and we'll give you one moment before they sign off as well. So Representative Moriarty, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do. A question for either Audrey or Shelby. Do you know whether or not the Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office investigated the incident and determined whether or not appropriate procedures were followed both the night before and during the course of the actual response?
So as far as the night before, I know that they did look into seeing if they were able to bring him into custody. I know that they did look into laws, and I do know that they tried to reach out to the state trooper's office to see if there was anything they could do, which, because his mother had denied all of the things that he had tried to do to her, they were unable to take him into custody. And then as far as the morning before, we tried very hard to not disturb the crime scene and stuff like that so they could do a proper investigation, but the entire investigation was done by the state trooper's office once my parents had left the house. And the Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office waited for the state troopers to arrive in order to arrest Patrick.
Okay, sir, during that period of time before the state troopers arrived, was there any question as to whether or not the county deputies had appropriately treated both you and your sister and the crime scene as well?
In my opinion, it was not appropriately handled. I think that if they had either removed Patrick from the house or removed Christian and I from the house and per se brought us, you know, to the Turner Rescue, so we didn't have to listen to all of those things, that would have been a better approach and probably would have made a lot less trauma for Christian and I. I also believe that as far as how they handled Patrick, that I don't think in any other circumstance they could have done anything different in the situation, but I am, again, kind of unaware of how they were handling Patrick because I was in a different room. All I know is what I heard.
Okay, thanks for your answer, and thanks to both you and your sister for your courage in coming forward.
Senator Timberlake, I'd like to recognize you.
Well, I just want to thank this committee for the work that you've done over in LD 785 and the other things that you've done, because I think it's been good work. And I hope you take this opportunity, the information that these two young ladies from, I'm proud to say from my town of Turner, have brought forward. And I just look forward to working with you as how we address this into the future. And these young ladies, I know, and their parents are, I know your parents would be proud of both of you, Audrey and Shelby. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Timberlake, and Audrey and Shelby, thank you so much. We're going to return you to what we call the attendee part of the meeting. You're welcome to continue to listen, and we'll have some other people who wish to speak to this legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now I'm speaking to those in the attendee portion. Of the electronic hand and keep it raised until you've been brought. I think, I don't know if I've frozen, but my internet is not stable either. Please raise your hand and keep it raised if you're speaking in favor of this legislation, and I will bring you over to the meeting. And we have one person, Representative Joshua Morris, who will come over to the panel. Representative Morris, welcome to the Judiciary Committee. You can proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Senator Carney. Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm going to be brief. I think, you all saw the very powerful testimony in the story from the two young ladies, Audrey and Shelby, and I just wanted to lend my support and thank Senator Timberlake for the work he's done for our community. As he said, this certainly is something that impacted our community. I think there wasn't a person in town that was not shocked by it and was not devastated to see it. And that's the reason this bill is before you. Similar to Senator Timberlake, myself, our families go back generations. Our memories usually extend beyond our lifetimes. And I don't know that anybody's ever remembered anything so devastating happening. And again, I want to thank the girls for having the courage to come forward and speak with you guys this morning. I thank you for your consideration. And I would just, again, concur with what Senator Timberlake said, and anything we can do to help with the with people that are in this sort of mental health situation to prevent these sort of tragedies from happening in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Morris. Committee members, any questions? Not seeing any. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then I believe Mary Barker is also here to testify in support. So I'm going to bring her over to the panel.
Hi, good morning. This is Mary Barker.
Welcome, Mary, to the Joint Standing Committee on the Judiciary. It looks like you have audio but not video, and that's fine. You can proceed with your testimony whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you. I come from probably a different angle, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my story. I am legal guardian for an adult child. In the past 2 years, I have had to call the police on 4 different occasions with different results. I want to just extend my condolences to the family. Sorry. And my child suffers from psychosis. He is currently in we've been through
Mary?
several situations.
Mary, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're having a very difficult time hearing you. Your audio keeps breaking up. Are you able to find a place that has better reception?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm outside. Can you hear me better now?
We can, and I'm going to restart. We typically give folks 3 minutes, and I'm going to restart the clock, and you can restart your testimony, please.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry. I don't know how much you got originally, but I'm legal guardian for an adult child. Within the past 2 years, I've had to call the police 4 times in various situations to try to get my child blue papered because of potential danger to self and others, with various results. The first occasion was when he was psychotic and was building cannons and Molotov cocktails to throw at what he perceived as aliens. And he was going to take these in his car and throw it at members of the public. I contacted the state police in person. They were extremely hesitant to do anything. And I had finally convinced them to go to the residence and take him to the hospital. From there, he was retained at a hospital, escaped the emergency department, he ended up in Massachusetts, where he was retained by the police and spent a month in a psychiatric hospital. The other occasions were in Orono, where he was a threat to others and himself, and they very successfully detained him and took him to the emergency room. Unfortunately, the emergency room dumped him. I found out that my legal rights as a guardian were totally subjective to the hospital, and I was not able to communicate effectively what needed to be communicated in order for him to get help. So at this point, my concerns are that the police aren't supported. I think it's a good bill. I think there definitely has to be a mental health support system in place in conjunction with police support, and whether or not that's crisis workers in the field working with police so that they can do an assessment for any kind of psychiatric hold. And I think that the aspect of mentally ill people with rights, I have found personally that my child was so psychotic that he was not able to rationally make any kind of judgments on his behalf or on others' behalf. And sometimes it's very difficult for lay people to make those kinds of judgments. He's autistic, so he comes across very subdued, and it's misconstrued as being able to understand the situations that he's in. It's not the case. So it can be very subjective for someone that's not taught how to look for these things. I know that as a mother, many times and a family member, my concerns were set aside. And I know that for protective custody, it is written in that police have the ability to take into consideration testimony from third parties to make judgment calls. But as I've been told by police officers, they're very leery about making these calls themselves. They feel as though there's a fine line between constitutional rights and risk to others, themselves, in the community. So I think that lends to the fact that they don't get a lot of support in doing these things. So I would certainly hope that part of this bill has some kind of amendment to include some kind of crisis intervention in the field to kind of take care of that. And that kind of goes along with Mr. Varney's mother not being able to be a participant. She may have been too traumatized or too much, in fear of her life to be able to participate rationally in what was going on.
Mary,
Yes.
is it okay with you if we see if committee members
of course
have questions for you? Because I think that this would be a good time for that to occur.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, and it looks like Representative Babbage has a question. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Barker, for sharing the story. I'm sorry for the challenges that you do face. Could you share with us the town of residence that you're in? And I'm interested in where police in different parts of Maine would take a person to be assessed psychologically. So where did they take your
sure
adult child?
Absolutely. So the first incidence was in Stockton Springs in Waldo County. Unfortunately, he was taken to Belfast, Waldo County General Hospital, to the emergency department, which I work at. I actually told the state police not to take him there because he believed there was a plot to kill him there. But that was disregarded. And as a consequence, he escaped. They just didn't have the type of process at the emergency department to take care of the level of illness that he had. He really needed a more secure environment than what they provided. So that was that situation. From there, he was found in Dorchester, Massachusetts. The Dorchester Police Department contacted me because they were working with the Maine State Police to try to find him. And they were very educated. They asked me a lot of questions about his mental health. I told them he was autistic. They knew all about some of the triggers that autistic people had, and they were very thorough. And so he was retained there, and he was taken to Kearney Hospital ultimately, to the psychiatric ward there, and he spent a month. Then he was, this latest instance was in Orono. The Orono police were fantastic. They took him to Northern Lights Emergency Department, and that was not a good experience. I found that I could not speak to anyone there, even though I was legal guardian and had sent my information into them. He had been assessed by a psychologist because of a court case coming up because he escaped the Waldo County ED, and he was deemed incompetent to stand trial. And the psychologist that dealt with that assessment for competency actually called Northern Lights to advise them that there was a commitment paper to have him go to a state-run psychiatric facility. They ignored that. I have, as a consequence, this happened twice within the last month and a half. I filed a complaint with DHHS on both occasions. The first time they held him for 5 days. In essence, he had taken lighter fluid, spread it throughout his trailer and himself, and was going to light it on fire because he said his neighbor was contacting him telepathically and wanting him to do things. And he was talking to voices, he was having conversations. His girlfriend refused to leave the trailer, so he didn't set it on fire, and the police were called. 5 days later, even though the Northern Lights psychiatric unit told us he would stay there, upon urging of the psychologist who had actually reached out to them and called them and said, please do not release this person, he's dangerous. And they said that they would not. The next day they released him. They would not talk to me. They called his girlfriend and said, do you have any flammable liquids in your trailer? And do you know what a safety plan is? But they assured her that he was safe. So this is not acceptable.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's a very complete answer, and I appreciate that. And I've learned a lot from it. Could you conclude by, with my questioning, by just clarifying for me how you think legislation could help with the police in your case?
I think it would give them a leeway to be able to, I think they feel as though they work under such strict parameters that they err towards not putting someone in protective custody in many cases. In many cases, it just evolves into chaos and horrible things. So I think in lieu of having a structure in place, I mean, previous speakers have talked about increasing behavioral health, which is tremendous. I mean, I talked to an ED social worker, crisis worker yesterday who said she had never seen in her whole career as many people blue papered as she had in the last year. So I think they're overwhelmed. And I think it's important to have in place tools for them to be able to progress to the next step. I mean, none of these laws are static, but we need to start someplace. And I think this is a good start.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you, Mary Barker. We have another question from Representative Tom Harnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Ms. Barker, for being here today. You've used the term a couple of times, protective custody, to have more tools for protective custody. What would protective custody look like to you? Is that always something that's a mental health facility or more? Or is it holding somebody in a police station? I'm just not exactly sure what.
Sure, I think it's in realm, for example, for involuntary hospitalization. I believe the term is protective custody. When police go and make a generalized assessment to detain someone to go to the next step, which is, the emergency room typically, right? So, I mean, that, I'm not sure I'm fully knowing what your question is, but that is what I would view it as far as, I think, for example, just from reference, for Northern Lights Emergency Department, what they initially told me, or what my child's lawyer said, was that the emergency department has to work under extremely strict criteria to hold someone, and so do the police, to be able to take them in. So I think there's misunderstanding. I think there's a lack of education. I think there needs to be a bridge, right? Where in lieu of being able to get a mental health assessment, there needs to be a tool to be able to bring someone in without that kind of, I don't even know what the word is, from the law enforcement perspective, just a risk that they're going to be penalized if they do so. So that, I guess that's what I would say.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions, committee members? I'm not seeing any, but Mary Barker, I'd like to ask you just a really simple question, because I think, as you heard earlier, the law did change last year based on legislation that this committee worked on. And if you could please give us the date of the most recent crisis that your son had, which I believe was the Orono event. Could you please give us the date of that event?
December 17th, 2021.
Okay, so very recently. Thank you.
Yes.
That's helpful information. And just a final request, committee members, any additional questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much for appearing before the committee today and for your testimony and answers to our questions.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
And I will turn once again to the attendees and ask if there's anyone else who wishes to speak in support of this legislation. Please raise your electronic hand. I'm not seeing any, and so now we'll turn to those who wish to speak in opposition and ask those folks to raise their hand, and please leave your hand raised until you've been brought onto the panel. And we'll start with Michael Kevita, who I'm bringing over to the panel right now. And I think he should be here in just a moment. And yeah, here he's joining us. And I'm also going to bring over the next person as well, since it's taking a while for people to come onto the panel. Michael Kevita, are you available to testify? We're having some technical problems, everyone, and I'm not sure what those problems are.
It looks
And
like
then
he's muted.
Oh, here he is. Okay, there may be some, he may not be available right now. I'm seeing a message. And then there's also Candy Cleaves, who is in the attendee space. And Candy Cleaves, I've been trying to move you to the panel without success. Are you available to testify? Oh, here she comes. Give us just a moment, everyone.
I think it worked.
Welcome, Candy Cleaves, to the Joint Standing Committee on the Judiciary. We appreciate you being here today, and you can begin your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the two young ladies who testified, and, I'm very sorry for the loss of their parents. I know how difficult it is to lose our family members to horrific situations. Good morning, Senator Carney, Representatives Harnett, and our honorable committee members. I'm Candy Cleaves from Garland, and I'm in opposition to LD 1728. A concept draft such as this fails to allow for an open and transparent government. When the government feels compelled to restrict rights, it should be done fairly and narrowly defined and regulated. And most importantly, it should be for the common good, not the good of a few. Our decisions to limit a person's rights to freedom should not be made based on emotions, but with clear thought and planning and respect to our Constitution. In the past, I have testified before you as a person with and a family member of others with mental health issues. And while that is still true, today I'm also before you as a survivor of multiple crimes, including assault, rape, and attempted murder, as well as having my uncle, Francis Mercer, beaten to death with a hammer by his son-in-law on May 27th of 2005, while his son-in-law was experiencing issues around a med change that had taken place. The system failed. 14 years, 2 months, and 14 days later, on August 10th of 2019, his daughter and 10-year-old grandson, my cousins, were shot in the head and killed by my cousin's then 21-year-old stepson, who was dealing with mental health issues and substance abuse. These events took place in Pennsylvania for their lives. Yes, we need to do something. We desperately need to do something. Our system is failing. But when our system is working to turn around and take away rights without even having the opportunity to have a fair trial, to be heard, even to be heard on a bill to make legislation around it, that's also a failure. We need to make sure that the training is better for all of our law enforcement. But our law enforcement, they are not supposed to be mental health workers. That's not what their job is. There's a lot of things that have been put in place or being in the process of being put in place to try to bring about more mental health care in the state. And we desperately need that. And we need it to work. And we need everybody to work together to make it work, instead of making things always about partisan or about money. Lives matter. The lives of the victims, the lives of the survivors, the lives of the taxpayers who pay no matter what direction things go, and the lives of our first responders. Keep in mind that our first responders are also most frequently people with mental health issues. And one of the reasons for that is that we're not making sure that they're getting the proper mental health care that they should be getting. You guys sit here and you hear all sorts of horrible stories. You hear that all the time. I know that you do, and I know that it affects each and every one of you. But our first responders, they're there in person having that. We need to make sure that they're getting the mental health care that they need as well. So
Thank you.
I ask that we come back, that we do not support this, and that we come back all working together to write a bill in the future if these other laws and things that are being put in place haven't efficiently worked. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Let's see if there are any committee members who have questions for you. Committee members, any questions for Candy Cleaves? I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much for your testimony and for appearing before the committee this morning.
Thank you.
All right, and We are still waiting for Mr. Kebeda to try to rejoin us, but at this point, I'm going to turn to those in the attendee space and ask if there's anybody who wishes to be heard neither for nor against on this legislation. We have one person. I will bring a couple of people. I will bring them over to the panel. And we'll start with Kevin Vojvodich.
Hello.
Welcome. And you may begin your testimony when you're ready, and I will be running a 3-minute clock. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Senator Carney. Representative Harnett, my name is Kevin Vojvodich. I am a managing attorney at Disability Rights Maine, and I'm here today to testify neither for nor against this bill. And I'd like to, start by thanking Senator Timberlake for reaching out to stakeholder organizations and, soliciting kind of our opinion on things, and greatly appreciate that. So just to kind of provide some information to the committee, in talking about LD 785, which you all heard last part of the last session, that essentially expanded the protective custody standard to align with the commitment standard. Prior to the change, the standard had been essentially kind of a substantial, imminent and substantial physical harm, and the standard changed as a result of the legislation last session to be more expansive, along with the commitment statute related to, danger to self, danger to others, and an inability to avoid risk. And I remember last session, I talked a lot about that. And so, our view at DRM is that the expansion of that standard, is an important one for addressing some of the concerns, the very sad concerns brought up in this bill. And so, we at Disability Rights, obviously have concerns on rights issues. But I think this expansion that we all agreed to last session is kind of an important piece of the puzzle here. And, resources, training, we don't disagree with that in any way, shape, or form. I know there was a training session held by the Attorney General's office and the Office of Behavioral Health related to the changes in protective custody. I actually watched it. I'm sure more training sessions are going to occur on that. And so as far as the rights piece, I think LD 785 may have kind of dealt with that issue related to protective custody. Whether there needs to be more training on those kind of issues remains to be seen. So that's Disability Rights Maine kind of take on this. And again, we appreciate kind of the stakeholder involvement on this issue, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Committee members, any questions? Go ahead, Representative Harnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Vojvodich, for being here today. And this is a difficult question, and if you can't answer it, just say so. But LD 785, we amended Title 34B, Section 3862 in the way that you described. Do you think that had that law been in effect at the time of the tragedy that took place to the Varney family, that it could have been a useful tool to prevent that?
Well, I don't want to, comment on the specific case, but I will say that the change to the standard was an expansion. I think that's an important distinction to kind of answer your question without answering on the specific case. I think when you're talking about imminent and substantial physical harm versus things like recent threats, or recent threats of self-harm or harm to self or others, or as Part C of the statute says, a reasonable certainty that the person will suffer severe physical or mental harm as manifested by recent behavior demonstrating an inability to avoid risk, or to protect the person adequately from impairment or injury. So I think, when we talked about this last session, we did term this change as far as an expansion in the statute. Now, I fully think that there is, there may be a need for training of both, professionals in the hospitals and, law enforcement, ongoing on these standards. But I believe the standard itself was an expansion, to the statute. So thanks for the question. I hope that not on the specific issue, but answers generally your question.
Did, thank you very much.
Committee members, any additional questions from Kevin Voivodich? Go ahead.
I can't hear anything right now.
Senator Carney, you froze for a bit there.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Representative Babbage.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Voivodich, I don't have the statute right in front of me, but what 785 did do, as you mentioned, I know recent conduct, that suggested there could be a substantial risk of physical harm. And the fact that there's perhaps a demonstrating an inability to avoid risk is part of 785. I know the previous standard said that a law enforcement officer could take action if they had probable cause to believe that a person may be mentally ill. Is that still on the books as a requirement?
Mental illness and the previous standard was a threat of imminent and substantial physical harm versus the standard we're talking about today. So, but mental illness is a prerequisite for being held under the mental health statute. Yes.
Okay, so 785 did not change that prerequisite.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, committee members? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Kevin Voivodich, for your testimony today. And next we will hear from Simone Main, or I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on, Malene.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator Carney and Representative Harnett and esteemed members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Simone Mallon. I'm the Executive Director of the Consumer Counsel System of Maine, which briefly is an organization in statute to advise you from the lived experience perspective of those of us living with mental health challenges in the community and having a voice in public policy. First, I want to thank Senator Timberlake for the thoughtfulness of bringing stakeholders together to try to discuss this last session. And I am utterly, I know Aubrey and Shelby are probably listening, and I just want to say I'm so incredibly sorry for what happened with your parents and your loss, and it is incredibly tragic. I think we first have to talk about, we have a crisis in our mental health system, and it intersects with law enforcement so often, and we ask our law enforcement community to be the de facto crisis system in Maine, unfortunately. We recently had a mental health summit at the end of November last year, and one fact that stood out to me was we have 83 full-time crisis workers for the entire state of Maine. And you all know that's 24/7. That isn't just who's on 9 to 5. And certainly there's part-time people, but if that doesn't talk about the extreme need in our community to fix some of the broken parts of our mental health system, that number is going to tell you from Aroostook to York to Western to Eastern, there's no way 83 people can support the entire crisis system in Maine. So we really need to be talking about that when we talk about solutions. You know, I don't know if you've read, and I put in my written testimony, the mental health working group, which came out of a legislative committee 2 years ago. And I want to say that Maine is lacking a strategic plan. Now, the department has one on their website that they did themselves. But in my world, work like this is done through major stakeholder engagement. We are not talking as a broad community. And why is that important? Because my experience as a person with lived experience will be different than a provider, than a lawmaker, from the department. And our voices all together make really good public policy. And we're really lacking that in our state today. And that was one of the major recommendations that came out of that. And I also do want to say that we do want to see what the changes to 785 are able to do before we talk about anything that would restrict individuals' rights in the mental health community. I do believe that law enforcement may not be well educated. They've got a lot thrown at them. I salute them. Their work is insurmountable at times, but we need to make sure they're well trained. They understand the system. When there's turnover, we got to make sure the new people are trained in order to make sure the things that we already have in place are utilized first before we go about making new laws that further restrict the rights of people living with mental health challenges or any other challenges. So thank you for your time, and I hope you take all these pieces into play when you make your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simone. And Malin is how you pronounce it?
Malin, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry I mispronounced it initially.
It's okay.
Appreciate your testimony, and I see that there are some questions for you. Go ahead, Senator Keim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here, Ms. Malin. The number shocked me, 83, so small. And I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask this to, so I'm going to try. And I agree that having, we need more crisis care workers. And in the Turner incident, I also question why there wasn't a crisis response, sort of on the scene or called in earlier. But
I believe there was, in talking through the situation earlier in the last year, there was discussion that crisis was there. So I wasn't there, and I haven't talked to the crisis providers, but I do believe they were involved in that situation that day.
Okay. So my question for you was a little bit different. I was wondering if you had ideas for us on how to get more crisis care workers. I mean, what do you see from your experience where there's something blocking or the bind there that we could be helpful with?
Well, one, I'll tell you the two crisis provider associations are here, providers here, Betsy and Mallory certainly will speak to that, I'm sure. But what I will tell you over, I have been a crisis provider in earlier in the 90s, and I've seen shifts over the decades, and now that kind of really dates me. There have been times when most of that was done by the state for many years, and then we created a crisis system that was robust, and then ideologies change. Whether we have a robust system and how that's funded. Changes with administrations and changes with financial priorities and what I have seen over time. I've seen us have a robust system. I've seen it pare down. And right now I think we pay a fee for service, which makes it incredibly difficult to have a system that looks like a first responder system. If somebody's sitting there and not responding to a call and they're not getting paid, they're not going to bring on a robust team to sit. But we do that in any other type of first responder situation. We have a robust system ready to respond. And we have changed over the last the last decade, to be much more shut down in that it's a fee for service. Thus, we can't robustly staff it because we can't pay for it. So that's really, I think, and Mallory and Betsy certainly are much more well versed in that. But that is one of the biggest philosophy changes and changes in the system that happened that I believe has restricted the amount of people that are actually out in the field responding to crisis. And I would much rather crisis respond than law enforcement. Partner together. There's so much going on around the country that we could learn from, especially the city of Austin, Texas, where you have an option to call. When you call 911, you can ask for fire, you can ask for police, you can ask for ambulance, and you can ask for mental health. And so there are very creative ways that we could work on our system. And that's why I think in working on a strategic plan, you figure those things out and you kind of plan for them and implement them. So
Thank you so much. That was really helpful.
Additional questions, committee members? I'm not seeing any. Thank you once again for appearing before the committee today.
Thank you.
And we'll next hear from Mallory Shaughnessy.
Hi, this is Mallory Shaughnessy, and I just wanted to say too that Michael is there, and I think he was supposed to be on the earlier section. I don't know if you wanted to go back to him.
We're gonna wait and go through all of the
Okay,
neither for nor against, and then
Okay.
we'll circle back.
just
Thank
checking.
you.
Okay.
No, I appreciate that.
Thank you. So good morning, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and esteemed members of the Joint Standing Committee on Judiciary. My name is Mallory Shaughnessy. I'm a resident of Westbrook and the Executive Director of the Alliance for Addiction and Mental Health Services. On behalf of the 35 members of the Alliance, I am here today to speak neither for nor against Senator Timberlake's concept draft LD 1728, but to share that we thoroughly agree with Senator Timberlake that there is a continuing problem to be addressed in the intersection of law enforcement and mental health crisis. We would also offer a few suggestions to the committee for the possible use of this bill. As mentioned by Senator Timberlake, we did participate with several others, many of which are on this Zoom today, in stakeholder discussions regarding ways to respond to situations such as what occurred in Turner, Maine. And we applaud Senator Timberlake for bringing together the stakeholder group and for continuing to push for fixes to the system of care during a mental health crisis. This type of situation must be handled with caution and care to assure individual rights are maintained and yet secure public safety. And as mentioned also, this committee did some very good work in passing LD 785 last year. We'd want to commend you on that, right around the same time as this bill was carried over. And as you've been hearing, LD 785 did make changes to the protective custody rules to align it with that language of posing a serious harm, which makes a lot more sense and makes it much more clarified of a situation for law enforcement. They're not under different language than what posing a serious harm is. We would urge, though, that you use this bill, this concept draft, as a vehicle to improve our crisis system of care, to provide funding for continued training of law enforcement. I think, as others have mentioned, and crisis workers in this new language. There have been a few trainings, but we know that there needs to be more, and there needs to be a greater understanding of exactly how this should be playing out in our public areas and in our streets. These changes are only going to save lives if those involved really understand them and are able to implement these changes. And I would also reiterate Simone's comment regarding the lack of crisis workers across our state. We saw a dismantling in some ways of our crisis system over the last decade, I would say. And this fee-for-service structure, it's like saying to a fire station, we're going to pay you per fire. And if you don't have a fire for a while, you still got to keep people on board and ready to respond. You can't do it. We need to have a system that is set in place that is robustly funded and ready to respond at any given time. And I would urge you to possibly use this concept draft to look at what's needed. The Office of Behavioral Health is working on changes and improvements to our current crisis system, and they will be needing funding to allow for those changes, to move more to a real crisis response that is similar to a fire station that has people at the ready, but they're going to need support and funding for that. And I would urge this bill be used potentially to work on some of these pieces to better train and educate and create a more robust crisis system. And I appreciate your time and having this conversation and continuing this dialogue, as it's so important and so needed. And thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Committee members, questions for Mallory Shaughnessy? Go ahead, Representative Harnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Shaughnessy. When Ms. Mallon testified, she used the number of 83 crisis workers for the state of Maine. Our last census, we have about a little over 1.3 million people in the state. I'm not a professional in this, but that doesn't seem like a lot of crisis workers for that many people. Is there a best practices number out there from the people in your field as to what that number would look like in a perfect world or a close to perfect world?
There are a number of studies that show what best practice would and could look like, and I'd be happy to get some of that information for you and what a more appropriate number might look like for the state of Maine.
That would be very helpful for the work session. Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Senator Keim.
Work session starts in like 20 minutes. Just wanted to give you, notice that you don't have much time to get us that information. But thank you. You mentioned, Ms. Shaughnessy, the Office of Behavioral Health, and that they were working on crisis response. Are you saying that they are working on a system that it wouldn't be fee for service, that there would be a response team ready? Because maybe this is something more we need to, something we need to learn more about.
It is my understanding that they are moving towards that type of a system. That is some of the language I've heard coming out of the department. I believe that there is work along that line. I hope it continues and gets funded and we actually see that play out in the field. I would love to see this group, this committee, maybe hear some more from them about that and work together on assuring that we do move in that direction.
Okay, but so you've heard of it, but you don't know where they are in the process of developing that system or what that system would look like.
No, we don't have any final information.
Okay.
We've just heard some language along this line.
Great. Okay, that's something we need to look into then. Thank you so much.
Representative Reckitt, go ahead.
Once I unmute on time. I'm sorry that I'm a little late today to the parade. I'm particularly sorry because I have only 2 degrees of separation from this family. My sister-in-law is a Varney, and so I was very conscious of the situation when it developed and the tragedy ensued. I want to ask Mallory, the question from the angle of what my expertise is, which is not mental health, but my expertise is more in law enforcement. And so I'm curious as to know whether or not we being whoever the we is actively pursuing a additional training vis-a-vis law enforcement. I know that at one point there was some training done, but surely not enough. I don't mean that I want law enforcement to be responsible for this, but certainly they have to know what is going to happen and why. And I think that whether it's informal or formal, I think there needs to be an interaction between the people who set up law enforcement trainings, that being the Board of Trustees of the Academy, and the Commissioner of Public Safety. And they need to be tangled into this, because if we're going to implement on both sides of this equation and make sure that people are referring the right people to the right people at the right time, they need to be involved. So my question is, are you planning to, what's happening in that arena? Because clearly that was in this situation.
Yes, and Kevin referenced this earlier. I know the Attorney General's office did do a training on this new language out of LD 785 from last year. And I did see that training and it was well done. I don't know how far that has been spread. I don't know if that has been now incorporated into the law enforcement training at the Academy. I don't believe, from what I have recently seen, it has been yet, but there may be some things that I have not heard of yet. But I do believe that there needs to be further training and funding to do that. One of the problems for law enforcement is, in the field, you have folks that are out there and to do training takes people offline. It costs money. Departments have a hard time doing trainings and keeping their officers and deputies updated. So I think funding to do that would be really important.
Committee members, any additional questions? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Mallory
Thank you.
Shaughnessy. Next, we'll hear from Betsy Sweet and then Michael Kebeda.
Good morning, Senator Carney and Representative Harnett and the good members of the Judiciary Committee. I am Betsy Sweet, and I'm here on behalf of the Behavioral Health Community Collaborative. We are a coalition of 7 nonprofit community mental health agencies who together serve about 70% of the people who receive mental health services in the state. We're testifying neither for nor against this bill only because we weren't sure exactly what is intended, and we agree with Senator Timberlake, and thank you so much for once again bringing to us the problem of the intersection between our mental health system and law enforcement. And one of the good things about going last is that you've heard most of what I want to say. I do want to say to the Varney sisters and to the entire community how sad and sorry we are about the tragedy that's happened. But the need and the intersection between our mental health system and law enforcement has never been more clear or important or inadequate to address the needs of those who need mental health services, or for law enforcement who are not trained and should not be trained in mental health services, but their hands are tied in the types of situation that led to the tragedy that we've heard about this morning. And I think it's just really important that we realize that we can approach this as a law enforcement problem, but really it's a human services problem. It's really a mental health problem. And we have to come from that perspective and bring everyone together, as Senator Timberlake did earlier last session. There is some incredible work being done around the country. Simone referenced Austin, Texas, and I actually put in my testimony a link to the story about what is happening in Texas. So they have what is called the fourth option. And that's the fourth option to 911 services, as Simone mentioned. And in that case, what would have happened is a pair of mental health workers would have been dispatched early on when the gentleman was at the school, right? And police could have come as backup. They worked together, but he was clearly in distress, but not doing anything illegal. And it wasn't even clear that he was going to be of harm to himself or others in the early stages. But they would have the training and the time and the patience to work with them, to lead them to safety first and then to services. And hopefully interaction with law enforcement could be avoided completely. Now in Maine currently, there's a lot of talk about crisis, and I just want to say a couple of things. There's 83 crisis workers. There are 8,500 police officers, and police officers will tell you that about 40% of what they deal with are mental health, behavioral health, and substance abuse. So just do the math and how mismatched that is. So there are a lot of programs in Maine that exist or are currently getting started, which if we funded it integrated could be a huge help and would not be, I don't think, a huge lift here. We have a crisis hotline, we have mobile crisis, we have crisis beds, all of which are woefully underfunded. We have the options program, which is new. We have Strengthen Me, which is the hotline for COVID stress. And this year, part of the planning center kind that they're doing is for a national 988 number that is specifically for mental health and substance use disorder calls. None of them are adequate. None of them are fully in place yet. But I think there is this bill could be a vehicle for that coordination and to put sort of light a fire and give some funding to these things. So let me just end with a quote from some of the police folks this is what they said. Adding the fourth option to mental health is the next evolution of 911, said Lieutenant Murphy from Austin. It dispatches mental health clinicians when there's no apparent threat of violence, but intervention would be welcome. The results have been positive. They were able to divert 3,564 calls away from police response, leaving the officers to respond to emergency and violent situations. So you want a social worker to go there, someone who's actually trained in substance abuse, mental health stuff. How about we send someone there who to go and do that? We're starting to cut away the things that we've asked law enforcement to do that they don't want to do. So let me just stop there. And I did also want to say that I think one of the other things that we must address is the reason that our robust system, in addition to the fee-for-service that Mallory talked about, which is obviously a huge problem, is we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is stigma. I have worked in this legislature as an advocate for mental health for almost 40 years now. And I will say that mental health funding always comes at the bottom of the list because of stigma. Now we're getting better about talking about it, but and again, it shouldn't be one versus the other. We shouldn't have to make Sophie's choices, but we talk about developmental disabilities. We talk about elderly. We talk about people who need those services, and they deserve them, and that's awesome. But when we get to mental health, it's hard to talk about. People who have mental health issues don't come and testify, don't come in large groups to the legislature because they can't and they shouldn't. And so it's really, it is the underlying foundation of why the system has all these ups and downs and goes in and out. And I hope we can get over that stigma and really pull together. It really should be HHS, you, criminal justice, and the departments to say, okay, let's make this work. We have money right now. Right?
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Let's see if there are committee questions at this point. Committee members, any questions for Betsy Sweet? I am not seeing any, and we really appreciate your testimony here today.
Thank you so much.
And finally, we'll hear from Michael Kebeda, who is, I believe, speaking in opposition. And Michael, you may proceed when you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Senator Carney. Thank you, Representative Harnett, and thank you to the committee for patiently allowing me to return and testify all the way at the end. My name is Michael Kebeda. I'm Policy Counsel for the ACLU of Maine, a statewide organization committed to advancing and preserving the civil liberties guaranteed by the Maine and federal constitutions. On behalf of our members, we wish to express our condolences to the Varney sisters and to commend them both for their courage and willingness to share their vision. We also wish to commend Senator Timberlake for the collaborative approach that he's taken to solve this extremely pressing problem. We are formally in opposition to this bill, mainly because of the direction that the title of the concept draft suggests that we as a state should go in, which is that we should rely on police to address issues that are better handled, as you've heard from speaker after speaker, better handled by mental health and crisis workers. We believe that sending police in to do the job of healthcare workers can lead to deprivations of civil liberties and civil rights. Laws that allow law enforcement to detain people when they've not committed a crime threatens those people's fundamental right to liberty. Mental illness or perceived mental illness cannot by itself be a justifiable reason for depriving a person of their liberty against their objection. This is why the law requires in almost all cases that police have probable cause to believe that a crime was committed before they take someone into custody, and probable cause must be established before a judge issues a warrant. We caution this committee against making it easier for the state to deprive someone of their fundamental liberty without adequate safeguards in place. There is additionally another issue that this horrible tragedy underscores, which is that Maine, like the rest of the country, must stop relying on the criminal legal system to solve healthcare challenges. You've heard about Austin, Texas. Let me read you a quote from the police chief of Dallas, Texas. In the wake of the tragic deaths of 5 police officers in Dallas, the police chief there, David Brown, said, "We are asking cops to do too much in this country." We are. Every societal failure, we put it off on the cops to solve. Not enough mental health funding, let the cops handle it. Here in Dallas, we got a loose dog problem. Let's have the cops chase loose dogs. Schools fail, let's give it to the cops. That's too much to ask. Policing was never meant to solve all those problems. As you've heard, cities across the country have already started experimenting with ways to respond to mental health crises using trained healthcare workers rather than with armed law enforcement. For example, in Colorado, Denver's Support Team Assisted Response, or STAR program, founded by the city's police chief, has proven extremely successful, very cost-effective, and has saved officers time and lives. The STAR program has people trained to respond to the kind of psychosis that took the Varney's parents from this earth. Police stations across the country are struggling to recruit new members. Perhaps the same people who would have applied to be law enforcement officers yesterday are interested in studying to be healthcare workers today. We urge the committee and the bill sponsor to take note of these solutions to runaway mental health crises. These solutions will save lives. I've attached an appendix to my testimony, which goes into detail about the STAR program. Thank you all for your time and attention. I am happy to try to answer questions.
Thank you very much. And thank you for including the appendix of resources. Committee members, any questions? Go ahead, Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kebeda, and I guess there's no way to ask this without, who would you have members of society call, if not the police, to respond to these situations? Should they call social workers to come and respond in these situations rather than police?
I think Representative Thorne, thanks for the question. I think that sometimes that is the right call. I think that often sending someone who has spent a significant period of time studying psychosis and studying how to de-escalate someone in that scenario and how to get that person to the treatment they need, that often is likely to save lives. I think arresting a person, sending them to jail, waiting for them to cool off, if that's the only option, then that is a good option. But if there are the longer list of options that have been informed by the healthcare system, then we should think about adding those to the list of options that people in Maine have.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee members, any additional questions? I am not seeing any. Thank you very much, Mr. Kebeda. And with that, I will bring to a close the public hearing on LD 1728. And committee members, we do need to take a little bit of a break before we begin our work sessions. I would suggest that we take a 15-minute break, if that is okay with committee members. That will give the bill sponsor for this legislation and the rest of us a few minutes to digest everything that we have heard. Is there anybody who feels that we need more than 15 minutes? Because I'm open to considering if that is a request. No, okay. So we will resume at 11:05. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.
Hello, Representative Harnett.
Good morning.
Good morning again.
Sorry I missed your call, but we're set.
It's all right. It's I think that for those who are watching and listening to the committee hearing, we are just reconvening from a 15-minute break. And so if you'll just give us all a moment for committee members to return, we will be resuming shortly. And Senator Timberlake, I'm pleased that you're joining us. We are going to take the work sessions in the order that are listed. We'll do 861, 1068, and then 1728. And so I'm going to move you to the attendee space until we get to 1728. Thank you. Welcome back, committee members. And I realized that we had already started the public hearing and some committee members joined us a couple of minutes late. And so let's begin our work sessions with introductions from committee members who weren't able to introduce themselves this morning. And I think Representative Libby, that may include you. If so, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Laurel Libby, and I represent District 64, which is part of Auburn and all of Minot.
Thank you. And then Representative Poirier, I don't remember whether you were able to introduce yourself this morning or not.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did not. I'm Jennifer Poirier. I represent House District 107, which is all of Skowhegan and part of Madison.
Thank you. And am I missing anybody else who wasn't able to do an earlier introduction? Looks like we got everyone. Okay, and so we're going to start this morning's work sessions with the work session on LD 861, and I am going to bring the bill sponsor over. And as I'm doing that, Peggy, we had already had one work session on this and heard the analysis. Am I remembering correctly, or am I off base?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And you actually might have had a couple of work sessions on this because the bill was presented to address a problem with who was doing the assessments under the yellow flag law or whether they were getting done. And it's a resolve. And so any kind of statutory changes couldn't be made in that resolve. I'm happy to kind of go back over and remind you what the bill does if you'd like.
Actually, yes, if you could give us just a brief reminder of the bill, and while I'm bringing both Representative Evans and perhaps some others over onto the panel. Thank you.
Sure. So the bill was it's sponsored by Representative Evans. It's a response to the yellow flag law, which was enacted in 2019, which require it's an assessment. I believe the law enforcement calls it a weapons restriction assessment. It starts out the same as what you were just talking about in the bill in the public hearing about officers, police, law enforcement recognizing, having probable cause that somebody has a mental illness and that there's some repercussions from that, and that they take somebody into protective custody. And at that point, they do an analysis and take them to be reviewed or assessed for whether they possession of a weapon would cause safety concerns. So there was, when that passed, the idea was that there would be telehealth ways to have this assessment done, that it wouldn't have to always be done in an emergency room. And after that bill became law, I don't know if people were working on putting those like an RFP together to figure out how those assessments were going to be done, but that wasn't implemented. And so Dr. Evans had submitted this bill supported by the Maine Hospital Association that did two things. One, it said that the Department of Health and Human Services was required to contract with medical practitioners qualified to perform that assessment. And they had, those contracts must provide for availability 24 hours a day and 365 days a year. And then it also said that the only places that those, until those contracts are in place to do the kind of telehealth assessments, the only places that where the assessments could be performed in person were basically the Riverview and the Bangor, is that called Dorothea Dix now?
Yeah.
So they had to be in the two state facilities, and it couldn't be done in an emergency room of any hospital. And that was kind of to make a point that there was a problem. And so that started the discussion. And then the discussion was that it was, I think there's not necessarily agreement about how that process, the process in the yellow flag law is going. Some hospitals and some people working in the emergency rooms are not enthusiastic about the situation that they're put in to do these. And yet I believe the department and the state is does not feel there need, at least the testimony was, there do not need to be changes. So you're kind of at a stalemate. You had discussed about changing the law to say, and I have a proposed amendment that we realized you couldn't put in the resolve because it's amending, it was amending the statute. And then I think a backup was basically to use the first section of the resolve to direct the department to contract with forensic psychiatrists and forensic psychologists to do these assessments.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, there's probably more than you needed.
No, that lays a great foundation for where we're headed now. And I see that Representative Moriarty has his hand up. And I also just wanted to ask, I believe that the bill's sponsor, Representative Dr. Evans, is on the panel. But Dr. Evans, if you could activate your video, then we could see you as well. And Representative Moriarty, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just so that I get off on the same footing with everybody else, I checked the procedural history of this bill online, and what I saw was that it was referred to us in March, held over on March 3rd, held over again on July 19. I couldn't see a record of a prior public hearing. I kept a lot of file jackets from the first session because I'm a pack rat, and I couldn't find a file for it either. Can we confirm that there was a public hearing at some point?
Yes.
I don't have that date.
Okay, yeah, we can ask Peggy. I know I recall it very clearly, but maybe Peggy, if you're able to check on the date of that, that'd be helpful.
Yes, there was a public hearing on Thursday, April 8th. You had work sessions on April 16th, May 27th, June 4th, and that June 4th is when you voted to carry it over.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Keim, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, Peggy, just so I'm not scrambling to find it, can you send us a link or something? I just wanted to read again what the proposed amendment was that we found we could not do because it was a resolve.
Okay, yeah, let me find that real quick.
Thanks so much.
And we can screen share that, and that way all committee members and the folks who have joined us for the work session can also see it. But at this point, what I'd like to do is to hear from the bill sponsor, Dr. Evans, are you able to provide us with an update? Should I turn to somebody else for the update? I know that folks have been discussing the path forward on this proposal.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that I'm not going to belabor the point. I think Peggy synopsized everything as it happened up to this point. And it is at a point of where do we go from here? I do understand that there have been some meetings, larger meetings with certain stakeholders. And I am going to step back and allow those people to update the committee on where we are today. I think the bottom line is where do we go from here, and how do we resolve any conflicts of getting these resolves implemented. The significant concern that still remains is harm to emergency room workers. And I might add, just since our last meeting during the public hearing, we at my local hospital have had an emergency room person assaulted. And there are several assaults that are going on. Not all are reported, but it is becoming a much more problem. And I think that at some point we're going to have to do something to resolve this before someone is seriously injured. So I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Evans. I did have a question for you about the recent assault in the emergency room at your local hospital. Was that in conjunction with a yellow flag assessment, or was it in conjunction with some other incident?
Thank you. In that situation, it was in concert with a patient, a COVID patient, demanding a particular treatment. So we're having some serious problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, and thank you for providing that information. I too have heard it from a lot of healthcare providers. Okay, so I confess that I'm not exactly sure who to turn to next for information about the status of negotiations on this legislation. And so I see a hand up, and Commissioner Sawchuk, we can begin with you. And then I would ask the other stakeholders who have joined the panel I'll call on each of you following the information we hear from Commissioner Sawchuk.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for having me, Representative Harnett, distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee. Certainly glad to be here this morning to give you an update. First, let me just say I was not involved in the original conversations around weapons restriction order processes, yellow flags, or 861 in the past. But I do want to say thank you to everybody that worked so hard to address an issue nationally that I think has been found to be a bit of a best practice. Whatever the title is in various states, it's a valuable tool, a tool that can keep our community safe, our loved ones safe. And I think that's what we're all trying to do. So I know I had a very, very strong vote from the legislature as well with the original language. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. I'm a little behind, even though I've been in this for a little while in this conversation, in the sense I wasn't part of those original behind closed doors chats as we really started to drill down on what this is going to look like. But what I can say is that I got involved primarily because we've got great partners with the health systems and law enforcement. I think we all want to do the right thing. We all want to work together to kind of figure this out. So we're really trying to operationalize what the original intent was and what that language looked like. And I'm glad that Jeff is on the call, Lisa's on the call, Katie Fulham Harris couldn't join us this morning. There's a bunch of folks with the state that have also been assisting in this process, to include Dr. Pollard, who runs OBH, Office of Behavioral Health, Dr. Deb Bader, Brian McMaster from the AG's office, Jerry Reed from the governor's office. There's a lot of folks that have been in the mix here. But for me, I got involved. We had a larger meeting of all the stakeholders to kind of set the ground rules and just talk about what everybody's thinking, what their primary concerns are. I thought that meeting went very, very well. Everybody was frank and forthright, as you would expect. And then out of that session, I had personally and professionally, I had some homework to do. So I stopped in at Maine Medical Center working with Maine Health, and stopped in there for a couple hours to talk to the heads of their acute psych, folks that do telepsych every day, the docs that are in that acute psych ward, discussing these issues with patients, with people that are in crisis. And I thought that was incredibly valuable. It's clear, and you see this on the COVID front all the time, you hear this every day, but we know that our hospitals are overloaded. Our folks are working incredibly hard. They are stretched thin, and that was very, very apparent during the time that I was there. I will also say, for me, it was kind of old home week. I know a lot of those folks from when they were docs and I was a patrol officer and working my way through, and now they're running departments and running divisions. So it was nice to get that input from them about what their day-to-day business looks like. Lisa then arranged a visit for me to go to Acadia Hospital, which was great. Same kind of scenario. Everybody from a CEO to docs, and able to have a frank conversation about what they're seeing, what they think, what are the concerns specifically about Yellow Flag, as well as the broader system. And I should note that there's definitely a broader system conversation, and then there's a Yellow Flag piece of this. And I'm happy to be involved in either one of those. I did get a chance to sit in on most of 1728, and there's a lot of great conversation happening there that I'd be happy to be involved with long-term for sure. But out of that session, I also went back, I talked to some district attorneys, and because there was some concern around hearing processes and doctors' availability and things of that nature. So I talked to the Maine Prosecutors Association, the current president and the current vice president, just to flesh out what that really looks like for a hearing, and took all that information and then really started working with individual entities as I got feedback from the state. And I will say this, and I apologize to Jeff directly, is that I didn't involve Jeff as a broader entity with the Maine Hospital Association as early as I should have. And I've had great conversations with Jeff one-on-one over the last few weeks. But I should have reached out to him specifically because he's got a cross section of hospitals all over the state that aren't just Northern Light and Maine Health. And I should have done that earlier. So I'll apologize in this setting as well for that. But ultimately, talking to the state team, and we were looking for options here, and specifically to 861, I would tell you that Dr. Pollard and her team have worked with, put it on an RFP, a contractor has been awarded that, and they are making additional changes, amendments to that existing contract to allow for these types of telepsych, telehealth assessments to occur through the crisis center that will shortly really be opened in the Bayside neighborhood of Portland. And Spurwink won that contract. There's been active conversations with them about their understanding of this process, their willingness to be involved in this process, and the answers have been yes. Dr. Pollard and her team are again working to make some tweaks to that contract. I still think that we need to figure out with our partners being the health systems, Jeff and Lisa and Katie and their entities, what that looks like from an operational standpoint. It's okay to have a vendor that's willing to do these, but how exactly we do that practically from a logistical standpoint, it's 2 a.m. in the morning. What does that look like? We're still working on that. I'm confident. I'm very, very happy with everybody's true commitment to this process. I think we're continuing to make progress. I don't have an answer for you today to say, hey, we got the whole thing figured out and, high fives all around and let's move on. But I do think a big piece of this is the state, in fact, moving forward with that telepsych component for these yellow paper weapons restriction order style assessments. So again, I'll certainly turn it over to you, Madam Chair, but thank you very much for everybody's involvement and investment in this important conversation.
Thank you very much. Senator Kime, go ahead with your question. And I
Thank
would
you.
also just mention to committee members, it might be helpful to hear from each of the stakeholders before we dive into specific questions. But with that, if people feel the need to have a question now, that's fine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here, Commissioner. You mentioned original intent of the yellow flag, and then you mentioned weapons restrictions. So I just wanted to reiterate for the committee, since of course I was here and involved in developing that the original intent was assessment, right, for community safety. So it wasn't a weapons restriction bill so much as it was finding a way for us to get assessment to people. And I'm also going to express my considerable dismay that we are still hearing that there aren't answers, when part of the original intent of that bill also was that we would have a telehealth option for these assessments. So as you mentioned, SPURWINK has gotten the contract and they're developing a site. So I'm wondering if you can give me a timeline on that, and also whether or not, we heard that there's very few crisis care workers in Maine. So will SPURWINK then be creating a contract nationally? So we'll be looking outside of Maine for people to do these assessments.
Thank you, Senator. Good questions. My understanding is that crisis center, which again is truly a best practice from a national perspective and something that we've been looking for years and years, that will be up and running in February. What I heard within the last week is it's early February, but I don't know exactly what their opening date is. And my understanding is that they would be doing these assessments with their existing staff, whoever that may be. That's how they would address that. It wouldn't be a national telepsych or telehealth contract with an outside entity.
So so SPURWINK's contract is going to have 24/7 access for law enforcement.
The crisis center is intended to be open 24/7, 365. Probably Dr. Pollard would be a better person to answer that question. The specifics around the contract, I don't have that information for you, but I'm happy to get that for you.
Yes, thank you. That would be very helpful.
Sure.
And Commissioner Sawchuk, did you say the contract has been completely negotiated or it's in the process?
Their contract, Senator, for the original running of the crisis center is done and in the books. They're well along the way of finishing the build out of the facility and hiring their staff and doing everything else. Dr. Pollard is looking to amend that existing contract to make sure that there's no question whatsoever about that telepsych component and this particular statute.
Okay, yeah, we would appreciate seeing that contract. Thank you. Representative Moriarty, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, I was struck by the last portion of your testimony regarding the completion of the contract and now its effective date. The resolve before us directs the Department of Health and Human Services to contract for assessments of involuntary hospitalizations. It sounds to me from what you said that that's actually happened. Is there any purpose to directing the DHHS to do what it apparently has already done?
I think what I'm hearing, Representative, is that the committee members would like to look at the contract to make sure that it does comply with the language as written. From my end, when I talked to Dr. Pollard, she would say the state issued an RFP, the contract was awarded, and now they're going to seek to amend that. So I do believe that in her mind, she's feeling that the resolve has been met. The intent behind that has been met with that RFP process. But I know that Dr. Pollard, I think our intent today was to try to give a broad-based update here, answer any questions certainly that I can. I'm happy to bring the whole state team back in and allow the subject matter experts to dive in on that. I don't want to give you a bad information one way or the other, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Now let's hear from the others who have appeared today to give us updates on this. And I'm going to start with you, Jeff Austin, because you represent the Maine Hospital Association and have maybe a more global perspective, but please provide us with your update.
Thank you, Senator Carney, members of the committee. Jeff Austin here on behalf of the Maine Hospital Association. A few quick comments. First, I want to thank Commissioner Sawstruck and the state for the time they have put into this. He owes me no apologies. We always appreciate it when folks directly talk to our membership and see the work that's going on the ground. So no apology necessary to me. We appreciate all the work that's been done. I think the issue for us at this point, as the commissioner said, is really more operational / logistical. From our standpoint, if you recall, the goal is not simply to do these assessments by telepsychiatry. That's the means to the end. The end, from our perspective, was to have the assessments conducted remotely. And that's what you see in the legislature. That is not conducted at the hospital out of our concern for retaliation. The angry guy gets told you can't have your guns anymore, and he comes back angry, and we have a mass tragedy at a very soft target of a hospital. So the goal is remote assessments, and telepsychiatry is absolutely a necessary means to remote assessments, but we would like them to be remote from the hospital. So setting up the telepsych system, as the commissioner outlined, is very welcome news, very appreciated. We will do whatever we can to help and make sure that that system runs smoothly. Now the only issue is out in the field, as predominantly local law enforcement activate this system. Are all these guys being run into the hospital anyway? And that's where it's expected that telehealth gets utilized from the hospital facility, or can it be done remotely? And I think there's just a lot of fact patterns and a lot of different scenarios we need to walk through so that we get on the same page. I think to Representative Moriarty's point, in many ways, yes, the technical goal of the bill was met, set up this telepsych system. I think we would ask you to continue to hold it to make sure that operationally, do we need any statutory changes, further changes to allow for remote assessments? And I don't want to go too far into the weeds what that means. But we do need to have an understanding, each side of us, when will people be brought to the hospital facility physically, and when will they not be brought to the hospital facility physically? So we appreciate the commissioner's continued work on this. I think he's put in a lot of time. I think it's all been in good faith and sincere. We all want this thing to work. You can't listen to that first bill and not just want to pound the desk. You know, how can we all stand there and see this slow train wreck coming and not be able to intervene in a successful way? That's what we all want. So we would appreciate more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff Austin. Committee members, any questions for Jeff Austin? And again, we'll have another opportunity once everybody has spoken. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Lisa Harvey McPherson, could you please give us an update from your perspective?
Yes, thank you, Senator Carney and committee members. I want to begin by thanking Commissioner Shostak. We we have made progress. We're not there yet, but the progress that we have made is due to his leadership convening a lot of interested parties in a really important conversation we had. And it was just before Labor Day, but we had all the right people involved in the conversation, and it was an excellent discussion. As he said, we did host him at Acadia Hospital, and the goal of the meeting at Acadia Hospital was to tap into the telehealth expertise that Acadia has. We perform thousands of telehealth psychiatry assessments, and it is an excellent medium for assessing for presence or absence of mental illness and treating individuals. And we wanted to kind of level the playing field of an understanding about telehealth, because as you recall during the hearing in the work session, there was some questioning of law enforcement. Could this even be done by telehealth? I believe that we've answered that question. We've made progress and we've resolved that question, and you'll see the telehealth contract. But Jeff is right. The intent of the telehealth assessment was to mitigate risk with a remote assessment that is separate and distinct from emergency room personnel. We look at this in the context of escalating violence. And we are in an unprecedented stage of escalating assaults against our personnel. And as one example, it's not all of Northern Light Health, but EMMC's emergency room is a really good example. And we had 260 assaults against our personnel in 2020. And by October 31st of 2021, we had 304 assaults. So we look at risk mitigation with vigor and commitment for our employees. So as we move into the next generation of this discussion with the telehealth contract in place, the question then becomes, how do we create the pathway to those remote assessments? And that's, we're not there yet, but I believe we have the right people involved in the conversation.
Thank you. Committee members, are there any questions? Not seeing any. And so I think at this point, we'll turn to Sarah Calder and ask you if you could please give us an update from your perspective.
Sure. Thank you, Senator Carney and members of the committee. I'm Sarah Calder. I'm with Maine Health. My colleague, Katie Fulham Harris, was not able to join you this morning, and she sends her apologies, but would just echo what my colleagues, Jeff and Lisa, have said. And we truly appreciate the movement that the administration has made and the commitment Commissioner Sawchuk has made. And we would just ask the committee to give us a little more time to work through those remaining issues that Jeff mentioned.
Thank you very much. At this point, I would first want to express appreciation to all of you for your continued work on this matter and open it up for committee questions to any one of the stakeholders who are here today, as well as to the bill sponsor. Senator Keim, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. And my question is to whoever can answer best. One of my concerns is whether or not there are enough practitioners to, and how they plan to attain enough people to fulfill this contract. It seems like people is getting employees is a problem for everyone. So if someone could speak to that, I would appreciate it.
I don't think Spurwink's on the call. I think they're the ones who have established to the state that they can meet the terms of the contract. Obviously, they've got to work out this amendment to the contract to provide the telepsych assessments for yellow flag. I don't think there are going to be, for this part of the work of the crisis center, I think the crisis center is going to receive a lot of work. For this portion of that work, I don't think it's going to be a significant number. We're talking a few dozen of these a year, I believe it. So I think their day job of handling patients in person and interacting with the community in person is probably going to be their heavier lift, but the department can speak to that much more intelligently than I can.
And just to piggyback on Jeff's comment, Senator, I would agree with that. I think over the 19-month period since this statute as drafted has been implemented, there's been 21 of these cases that have actually worked their way to the entire system. There's also an unknown number of folks that law enforcement officers had attempted to complete that process and weren't able to for one reason or another. So I do think, that 3 dozen, I just capped it at 50. And said, let's say the 2 largest healthcare systems in the state now allow these. Let's say it's 50 a year. So I could agree completely. The model itself, the crisis center model, is going to be incredibly busy. And that would be good for the hospitals. It'll be good for law enforcement. More importantly, above all else, it'll be good for the consumers and the patients that crisis center is there for. But I don't believe that this aspect of that particular contract will be overwhelming.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, committee members? I'm not seeing any right now, but I would really appreciate some information about 2 things. One is if there's anything you can share with us about resolving the logistical issue, the second part of this, which is not having these assessments occur in a hospital, in an emergency room setting, and then also what sort of timeline you're looking at for either being able to resolve that or exhausting efforts to do that, such that we would want to take up and make a final decision on this legislation. And I can start with any of you. Maybe we'll start with Commissioner Sawchuk and then follow the same path that we did earlier.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. It's a good question as well, Senator. I think that out of the latest conversations we've had about that logistics and operations, I think we want to have another broader conversation with a larger group, because I have found those individual system conversations to be very fruitful. I do think that initial hurdle, the other stuff didn't matter if at least we had an option for telepsych, right? That option is now coming to the table. Let's figure out how to operationalize that. So I think that would include a larger meeting. And then from there, I think we'll know, I'll have more information myself on behalf of the state to figure out and better answer your logistical and operational question. So maybe Jeff could speak more to that larger group. And we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, I would pretty much echo exactly what the commissioner said. We're having a special board meeting Monday to discuss the status of this bill and another issue. This is kind of fact dependent, and there needs to be a few more voices at the table. Local law enforcement, I think, needs to, and sheriffs need to be, we need to take their temperature, and we need to understand better what they're seeing, what they're viewing yellow flag as. We're coming at it, many of us, from what we thought was the original legislative intent. These guys are in the field, sort of trying to put it into place, and how are they feeling about it? And we need to land somewhere with a common understanding of who is going to get yellow papered in the community and how. Like, how did they get on your radar screen? How did you make the determination, yellow, blue, or both paper? So I apologize that it's taken us a little while to get to a point where we can really get down to the street level on this. But I think it's worth it to continue the conversation.
Thank you. And Lisa Harvey McPherson?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're at a point where the Hospital Association board discussion of all the hospital leaders in Maine will be a critical conversation, and then reconvening the larger group that the commissioner brought together last September would be the next partners. And I think that the MHA meeting and the next meeting with the commissioners convening will give us the line of sight to determine, can we come to the making this
Operational.
reality in a consensus manner, how's that, or not?
Thank you. And Sarah Calder?
I would agree. Thank you.
Okay. So we as a committee and as a legislature are kind of running out of time, even though it's just mid-January. And so I'm wondering if you could foresee coming back to us sometime in perhaps the second week of February. Does that give you all enough time?
I think that does, Senator. With Jeff's association and that meeting on Monday, really from there, we'll set up an additional meeting with that original group. I think the second week in February is absolutely doable, and I do appreciate that extra time.
And does that work for everyone else? Jeff and okay, Lisa and okay. Representative Evans, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add that I'm encouraged today. This has been an ongoing process, and I think that the stakeholders have made significant strides since we last met. And I want to thank the committee for its patience during what is an obviously serious situation that is being properly addressed. So I thank you for that and all the stakeholders for what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Evans. And thank you all committee members. Are there any additional questions for the bill sponsor or for any of the stakeholders who are here today before we end this work session? Go ahead, Senator Kime.
So I guess we're going to table this. That's the plan, and Representative Evans is fine with us tabling for now and picking it up again after we have further information.
Yes, that is the plan that I foresee. And Representative Evans, is that acceptable to you?
That's acceptable to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to start moving our stakeholders back to the attendee part of the meeting and would ask committee members if someone has a motion. And I see that Representative Harnet's hand is up. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you. I was going to ask if we needed a motion to table, so I will make that motion to table on 861.
Okay, motion to table by Representative Harnet. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Moriarty. And we will do this with a roll call vote. And I would just ask our committee clerk if she's available. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, I was on the phone.
No, we moved really quickly there at the final moment. Thank you very much. And I think we're ready when you are.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Galgay-Reckitt.
The answer is yes, but I don't think you can see my face because I cannot get on the video for whatever reason. My device says that the chair of the committee is blocking me, which I don't think she probably is. So, maybe she is.
Let me see if I can fix that. During the break, your camera was still on, and you're right, I did turn it off, but let's proceed with the roll call and I'll see what I can do. It's my problem that I created.
With permission of the chair, shall I indicate Representative Galgay-Reckitt is voting yes?
Let's get her on camera first.
Thank you.
All right, here I am.
There we go.
Thank you.
My apologies, Representative.
That's all right. I've been here the whole time, but I just I kept trying and gave up finally. So anyway, I am here and my answer is yes.
Thank you very much. Representative Galgay-Reckitt votes yes. Representative Newell. Representative
yes.
My apologies. Representative Newell votes yes. Representative Evangelos.
Yes.
Representative Evangelos votes yes. Representative Poirier.
Yes.
Representative Poirier votes yes. Senator Keim.
Yes.
Senator Keim votes yes. Senator Sanborn. Senator Carney.
Yes.
Senator Carney votes yes. Representative Harnett.
Yes.
Representative Harnett votes yes. Representative Babbage.
Yes.
Representative Babbage votes yes. Representative Thorne.
I apologize. Can I ask to have the question repeated? I was distracted.
I can refresh your memory about the motion. It's a motion to table this until the second week in February.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Representative Thorne votes yes. Representative Sheehan.
Yes.
Representative Sheehan votes yes. Representative Moriarty.
Yes.
Representative Moriarty votes yes. Representative Hagan. Representative Libby.
Yes.
Representative Libby votes yes. I'll recall the absentees. Senator Sanborn. Senator Sanborn is absent. Representative Hagan. Representative Hagan is absent. Madam Chair, I have 12 members voting in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 2 members are absent.
Thank you very much. And so the motion to table carries 12-0 with 2 absences. And so we will close the work session on LD 861 and look forward to having a final work session the second week of February. And with the closing of the work session on 861, our next work session, go ahead, Senator Keim.
Sorry, I just had one thought on 861 that I would just like to throw out there, and that's that David Trahan on Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine was very involved in drafting that legislation. And since many in the governor's office have moved on since that time, I was hoping that he could be included in the stakeholder conversation. So if anyone is still listening, that would be my request, because I know they're still going to have discussions. Thank you for allowing me to jump in on that.
You're welcome. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our next work session, which is on 1068. And since I was the primary sponsor of that legislation, I'm handing the virtual gavel over to Representative Harnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as Senator Carney indicated, she is the lead sponsor on LD 1068. And we are moving into a work session on that bill. And I just want to set the stage and ask Peggy to correct me if I say anything that is not accurate. This was a bill we took up in 2021. We had a public hearing on April 6th. We then had a work session on April 15th. The bill was eventually voted out, ought to pass as amended within a divided report. And then it was carried over in June of this year. And that's the posture that we find ourselves in today. Is that correct, Peggy?
Actually, just a correction is you did have a vote on the bill and then you decided to carry it over. So it was never actually reported out. If anybody's looking for what was then the majority report, it's not an official document that's posted on the website.
Thank you for that clarification. And so we've heard but at the work session, we heard your bill analysis. We had discussion, and it's my understanding that the bill sponsor would like to be heard on the bill at this point. So I would recognize Senator Carney.
Thank you very much, Chair Harnett, and thank you, committee members. I wanted to speak to you about this bill. This morning's hearing on Senator Timberlake's bill was very moving, and it strikes me that if LD 1068 had been in place, there would have been another option. The family would have been able to act on their own behalf once they heard those threats against family members to seek an emergency protective order that could have helped them. And it makes me regret a little bit what I'm about to ask the committee to do. But when I drafted LD 1068, I really wanted to focus the bill on the most significant needs we have for protective orders, including protecting students and teachers in classrooms and protecting workers in businesses. Those are areas where we see significant mass shootings. So just last November 30th at the Oxford High School in Michigan, 11 people were shot by a student. There had been advance warnings that the student was preparing to take dangerous actions involving firearms against his colleagues or his co-students. And indeed, he shot 11 people. He killed 4 students. The others were very severely injured. And everyone at the school that day, of course, was dramatically impacted. And I think we could see this morning that members of the Varney family and members of the entire Turner community have been forever changed by the violent actions that happened last year in that community. I wanted to remind committee members that school shootings are a really significant problem in our country, that since the Columbine crisis, there have been 278,000 children who have been exposed to gunfire in their schools. 157 children and teachers have been killed, and 350 have been injured. So we know that this is a difficult problem. I don't have the stats on workplace injuries, but I can tell committee members that in my experience as an attorney representing employers, threats of violence with firearms in schools and workplaces do happen, and we need better tools to deal with them, as we do need better tools to deal with the situation that happened in Turner and others that unfortunately are sure to occur in our state and in our own communities. That being said, I did not have the time over the summer and between sessions to really continue to work on 1068 and to more sharply focus it at addressing those specific issues regarding school and workplace violence. I think that focusing the bill more sharply on those issues will address some of the concerns that have been raised by opponents to the bill, and I will keep working on it. But at this time, I'm going to ask you to vote ought not to pass. And I'm sorry for being emotional. I thought this morning's presentation really impacted me, and I hope it impacted all of us and strengthens our resolve to help our community members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Carney. And today has been a very emotional day, I think, for everyone on this committee, having listened to family members affected by the loss of their parents in such a tragic and horrible way. But I need to ask Peggy, our analyst, a procedural question. We did have a vote. We did have the vote in April of last year, the divided report. Do we need to have that reconsidered before entertaining Senator Carney's motion ought not to pass?
You reconsidered that vote when you voted to carry over the bill.
So that vote no longer exists for all intents and purposes.
Right. I think you're clear.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion ought not to pass made by the bill sponsor, Senator Carney. Do I have a second? Seconded by Representative Sheehan. Is there any discussion amongst committee members? Seeing none, I would ask the clerk to please call the roll on the ought not to pass motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to do so. Representative Galgay-Reckett.
Yes.
Representative Galgay-Reckett votes yes. Representative Newell.
Yes.
Representative Newell votes yes. Representative Evangelos.
Yes.
Representative Evangelos votes yes. Representative Poirier.
Yes.
Representative Poirier votes yes. Senator Keim.
Yes.
Senator Keim votes yes. Senator Sanborn. Senator Carney.
Yes.
Senator Carney votes yes. Representative Harnett.
Yes.
Representative Harnett votes yes. Representative Babbage.
No.
Representative Babbage votes no. Representative Thorne.
Yay.
Representative Thorne votes yes. Representative Sheehan.
Yes.
Representative Sheehan votes yes. Representative Moriarty.
Yes.
Representative Moriarty votes yes. Representative Hagan. Representative Libby.
Yes.
Representative Libby votes yes. I'll recall the absentees. Senator Sanborn. Senator Sanborn is absent. Representative Hagan. Representative Hagan is absent. Mr. Chair, I guess I need clarification as to how Representative Babbage is voting.
He was voting no, I believe.
But it's an ONTP.
It's
Oh.
ONTPA. I do have a minority report.
I'm sorry.
So that would be an ought to pass as amended.
It is.
Thank you so much.
Should I just briefly elaborate on that at this time? Just very
Certainly
brief.
briefly, and then you will provide it.
Yes. Only, I don't have the surrounding statute, but I would want to make sure that it's discretionary and that a default storage would be provided by the Maine Department of Public Safety
Thank you.
on request. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Clerk Panett. And with that, I would close the work session on LD 1068. And our next item on the agenda, I'm sorry, Representative Thorne, I apologize. I'm going back and
Sorry
forth.
about that. Mr. Chair, I just was wondering, Representative Babbage cut in before the totals could be given on yes, no's, and absent. And I'm just, for my own notes.
I apologize. I'll let the committee clerk read those. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had 11 members voting in the affirmative, 1 member voting, I'm sorry, I should back that up. The motion was ought not to pass, 11 members voting ought not to pass, 1 member voting ought to pass as amended, 2 members were absent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does that give you the information you need, Representative Thorne?
Yes, it does. Thank
Yeah,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to apologize. There was a pregnant pause there, so I took it to explain myself, but I should have waited till the announcement of the vote. Thank you.
All is forgiven, Representative Babbage. Quite all right. And now for the second time, I will close the work session on LD 1068. And we have one further agenda item, and that is a work session on LD 1728. And Senator Carney, did you want me to turn it back to you, or did you want me to take us to the end here? It's up to you.
Thank you for that offer. I have blinked away my tears and I'm ready to go. Thank you. So we'll open the work session on LD 1728. And let's see, I'd like to start by saying that I think we heard a lot of really important information this morning in the public hearing on this bill, and some really great suggestions and ideas, but most importantly, a really urgent plea for additional resources for mental health care in our community, and in particular for helping to connect available mental health care resources and law enforcement officers so that the right people are providing the care that Mainers need. And with that, I'd like to recognize Senator Keim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that we do have a lot of, well, we have a few different options in front of us with this bill, since it is a concept draft, and clearly there's there are things that need to be addressed, but, maybe not the change in law that was originally intended or considered. I was part, just so everyone is aware, I was part of a lot of the stakeholder groups that Senator Timberlake held over the summer and even this fall, trying to discuss what went wrong and what we could do to be of benefit in that situation when they arise. And you just can't go back and look at a situation and figure out all the pieces. Definitely everyone in the stakeholder group, I think, pretty much agreed that 785, the changes that were made there, could have been helpful. Then there became the question of whether or not there was enough training on 785. And I don't think that I have the answer to that question, even after listening to the public hearing today. I know that there was one training done, and I believe Commissioner Soschuk, in answer to my question about that through an email, had answered that maybe 100 law enforcement attended that, who then are expected to go and share this information further, right? So maybe we need more training. Crisis response is a huge issue as well that we heard, and just having that available. I'm very interested to hear more about what they're doing in Austin, Texas, with their system there of having it just be part of our system of response. And I was, when they mentioned that, I never thought of it before, but I know that when someone dials 911 in my area, I'm friends with people that are going out in response, and this is, everyone goes. It's just this huge response in my area of, the police, the fire, the ambulance, they all show up. And, but knowing that we have such a mental health situation for people to take on, maybe that's something we should consider. So, I would like us to hold this bill and to see what we need to do, and and to not vote it out today, but to discuss what it could be used to do that is helpful. And so, I'm hoping that we can, I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss it and then maybe table it today, but I would love to hear from my colleagues on, after everything that we heard today, is there further questions that we want to ask, and see if there's at least one avenue that we could choose with this bill that would be helpful to law enforcement as they face these situations. The tragedy was so overwhelming, and to think about being any one person that was there in that moment, I feel completely overwhelmed for what everyone had to face. So that's what I heard today, and I appreciate the ability to just kind of, I have been walking through this. So, there's the idea of assessments that we've just talked about, which, hopefully seems like that piece might be headed in the right direction. But crisis response and training, those are the two areas that I think we should probably use this bill in some manner for one of those.
Thank you, Senator Keim. Senator Keim, it sounds like you're suggesting some discussion before a motion to table. I had thought you were going to make a motion to table, but we can definitely, I think it's a good idea to have some committee members weigh in, and we'll maybe get a sense of the direction we want to take. Representative Thorne, I think your hand was up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as politely as I can say, I was disappointed that you cut off my line of questioning today at the public hearing. I just wanted to go on record on that because I wasn't sure where my questioning was going to go, and where I saw Senator Timberlake was still in the room, I wanted to pose it to him versus Shelby or Audrey, because I know that they'd had to deal with that night already enough. So the moment's come and gone for the questioning, but I was wondering if it's possible that we could bring Senator Timberlake back into the discussion if he's still in the waiting room, so that I could ask him the question I wanted to ask this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate your reminder. I think that sometimes we get kind of wrapped up in the process, and I had neglected to bring him back in when we started the work session. And please accept my apologies, Senator Timberlake, and Representative Thorne, you may definitely proceed with your question.
Thank you. Senator Timberlake, earlier this morning when we were in the public hearing portion, we talked a lot about the response and the actions of the police officers once the crime had been committed. And when I said I wanted to refocus my attention back to the events of the earlier in the evening, that was to possibly address what could have gone differently at that time to prevent what happened later in the morning. And I know you weren't there. I know Audrey and Shelby were there. I guess I'd have to ask them separately on another occasion other than today to talk specifically about what occurred, what was said, and what was discovered earlier in the evening when the police were there for 2 hours. Is that correct?
They were there 2 separate occasions, as I understand, during the day. They was earlier in the day, and then they showed up later in the day. And the last time they was there for approximately, and I don't know for sure because I haven't read the police record, but in my conversation, and Senator Keim has heard it from the sheriff, somewhere around 2.5 hours they spent trying to get the gentleman to come out of his room. And they had called, as I understand it, that they had called for some mental help to come and assist them, but there was nobody available to come, is the way I understand it. So, and it was something we heard today in the testimony of only, I forgot whether it was 83 or 86 people in the whole state, which I'll be honest today, folks, shocked me.
Okay. And Chair, may I ask a follow-up?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Senator Timberlake, I mean, after everything that we've heard this morning on this, from everyone we've heard, the obvious testimony of things that went wrong that evening, being Monday morning quarterbacks, where are you now as far as your thoughts or assessment of where we go from here?
I think Senator Keim did a pretty good job of laying it out when she first came on. I'd like to see us table this and hold it, and we do some more work between the mental health industry and the law enforcement industry and figure out what each one needs. I know funding is part of it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And every person sitting on this committee knows that I'm fairly tight with money, but I think it's time that in this case that this has to stop, and we have to address the mental health industry that's out there. We can see that it's a problem throughout the state. I'm hearing it from in my conversations, I'm hearing it from other agencies. So I think that, I don't know, does any of us have an answer today? And that's what my whole bill was to bring forward, was to create this discussion we have here today. And I really appreciate each and every one of you taking this as serious as it is, because I think you all understand what our community went through. And I don't think we want to see any one of our communities around the state of Maine ever go through it again. So I think that if we can do something to slow this down, we work with these people, and I'm willing to be part of it. We come back and with a recommendation a little ways down the road. And if we can't come up with one, then it's such time that you can take the action that you need to take there. But God, I hope we can come up with something.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Moriarty, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did not take the time in preparation for today's events to review the bill that was passed in the first session, LD 785. But I would note that that's been in effect now for less than 3 months. I think it would be premature for anybody to give an adequate assessment of its effectiveness and shortcomings, if any, So I certainly feel that Senator Timberlake is on the right track when he suggests that a motion to table would be appropriate. I would support such a motion. However, I won't make it because doing so prevents anybody else from speaking to the issue before us as a matter of procedure. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. Representative Reckitt?
Thank you. I think unless I'm totally lost track, and I don't think so, we just tabled the discussion that's somewhat related or absolutely related to this discussion till mid-February, so we could get more information on that score. It seems to me that that kind of timeline may be what we want to engage in on this bill as well. It's to say that we would at least report back if we cannot take action in mid-February. At least we could have that as a goal, that we have a month to try to pull together the information on Austin or the other places that we've heard are doing something creative on this issue. And so I would like to have us postpone continued discussion until the same time period when we're trying to do it with the other bill, unless that is totally out to lunch, in which case I'll go out to lunch.
Thank you for that suggestion. It is shortly after noon. Go ahead, Representative Libby.
Thank you. I do believe that Representative Thorne had his hand raised first, and I don't mind deferring, but I simply would echo what the previous two representatives have said. I realize we are discussing LD 1728 and not the resolve that we just finished discussion on recently, but I feel that they're inextricably tied together, and I would be open to, as Representative Moriarty suggested, a tabling motion until in February.
Thank you. Committee members, does anybody else have something to share before we move on to a motion? I'm not seeing any. Senator Keim?
In that case, I make a table to motion. I'm sorry, a motion to table.
Thank you. I'm going to speak very carefully. Is there a second on the motion to table? Representative Moriarty?
I second the motion.
Thank you. So we've got a motion to table and a second, and we'll take a roll call vote on this motion as well.
Okay,
And I think we're ready, Supi. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Galgay-Reckitt.
Yes.
Representative Galgay-Reckitt votes yes. Representative Newell.
Yes.
Representative Newell votes yes. Representative Evangelos.
Yes.
Representative Evangelos votes yes. Representative Poirier.
Yes.
Representative Poirier votes yes. Senator Keim.
Yes.
Senator Keim votes yes. Senator Sanborn. Senator Carney.
Yes.
Senator Carney votes yes. Representative Harnett.
Yes.
Representative Harnett votes yes. Representative Babbage. I can't hear. You're muted.
It's all right. Yes.
Thank you. Representative Babbage votes yes. Representative Thorne.
Yes.
Representative Thorne votes yes. Representative Sheehan.
Yes.
Representative Sheehan votes yes. Representative Moriarty.
Yes.
Representative Moriarty votes yes. Representative Hagan. Representative Libby.
Yes.
Representative Libby votes yes. I'll recall the absentees. Senator Sanborn. Senator Sanborn is absent. Representative Hagan. Representative Hagan is absent. Madam Chair, I have 12 members voting in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 2 members are absent.
Thank you very much. And so committee members, the vote on the motion to table 1728 is 12 in favor and 2 absences. And so with that, we will thank the bill sponsor, who I believe has already left our meeting, but thank you so much, Senator Timberlake. And the bill is tabled, and we'll wait to hear back from the sponsor in a couple of weeks. And with that, we've concluded our work for today. Did want to give committee members an update this afternoon. The work session on LD, I think it's 1529, which was the constitutional amendment involving a right to privacy. We've delayed that for some additional work on the part of the sponsor, and we will most likely take it up next week. And so our work for today is done. The work session this afternoon is canceled, and I wish you all well and see you tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll
Thank you,
second it.
everyone.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.